Welcome everybody to this presentation about cannabis recovery. When I say recovery, I also mean just wanting to limit the use or just to understand the relationship that we can have with cannabis, both on a psychological level, but also on a nervous system or biochemical level. And really, it's learning about, for me, it was actually learning about the body, the effects of cannabis on the brain and body that has gotten me to limit my own usage. And over the years, I've been very intuitive with how I've used cannabis, and I now use it semi-frequently, you could say, as a tool to tap creativity, at times to help me relax. I'm a business owner who runs around a lot, so I like to use cannabis at times, but I know the point I get to when cannabis starts to use me. And that is the honest truth that we have to have with ourselves if we're going to have a healthy relationship with anything in our life, whether it's food, knowing when to stop, whether it's cannabis, knowing when to stop, or alcohol, knowing when to stop, or some toxic relationship for some of you, knowing when to stop or set boundaries or limits. Really, we're talking about cannabis as the thing that we're focused on, but we're really talking about the relationship you have with yourself, because that's the foundation for all other relationships. And the more you're connected to yourself and your true needs and feeling like you value yourself and honor yourself, the more you're able to honor yourself in your life with things, say, like cannabis. So, all that to say, we're going to dive in right now. If you're watching this at home, grab a pen and paper. This is going to be a very informative session. So I got a little presentation made for you guys. I usually just share these with clients, but I might start sharing it with the general public. So here we go. How to reshape your relationship with cannabis and create the life you desire. Cool. Which, by the way, creating the life you desire requires energy, doesn't it? And when you have an addiction or you go to something like cannabis, it can actually drain your energy, even if in the moment it gives you a short-term burst. So you have less energy to create your dream life with. Cool. So who is this for? It's for anyone who wants to learn about the effects of weed and is considering quitting or limiting. Or if you know somebody who wants to quit or limit their use, or if you want to just become more conscious with your personal use, learn about the relationship you have with yourself. So when you do use cannabis, it's from a healthier place. And one big disclaimer, this is not a shaming session, nor a shit on weed use session. I'm just sharing information with you that's the best version of the truth I can offer, because I recognize that you have different life experiences than me or your neighbor down the street, different desires, unique biochemistry, and a unique history as well with cannabis, different perceptions of it, different personal biochemistry and psychological relationship with it. So this isn't a shaming session. It's just here to be informative to you. So I hope it does that purpose today. So an overview of our session, my personal story with cannabis, a truthful pro and con list of it. All right, so get ready to rumble. And then the stages of addiction or overuse. Some of you don't like the word addiction. You're like, I'm not addicted. Another word you could use is overuse, just using it more than what you feel like is good for you. Kind of have that sense. And then the last thing is the stages of recovery and some tools to help recover if it's something that you want to do. Cool. So my story with cannabis. All right, here we go. So I've had really incredible experiences with cannabis, very deeply profound spiritual experiences and healing experiences with cannabis, cannabis being an aid to kind of help my prefrontal cortex dampen down, create that flow state or transient hypofrontality where you start to use the prefrontal cortex a bit less and you start to open up to the emotional centers. And so I've had some amazing experiences, but I've also seen the undesirable effects on myself personally, using it too much, having it affect my mood, having it cut off from my empathy centers and my social relationships, and when I use it too consistently. Okay. So here's how my story goes. It was a scary drug at first, and I thought it was bad. I learned growing up in middle school, they painted all drugs and alcohol as like the devil, as bad, which that works for a year or two. But when you get into high school, when I got into high school and everybody around me was doing it, I kind of felt that peer pressure to do it as well. And now it was kind of like this forbidden fruit. And I liked being a bit of a rebel, especially at that time. So I got into it, tried it for the first time at a friend's house, got super baked. Like I'm talking like I can remember it to this day. Like I got super baked, but I had so much fun. I loved being high because it gave me permission to be silly. I felt like because I smoked, I could just be my silly self, which is interesting because I can be that without weed. But at that time, I felt so repressed and anxious and scared to be myself. Being high was the excuse. So it helped me tap into that playful part. Food tasted amazing, etc. It was very, very fun. However, it turned into an escape for me not too long after I was having fun with it. It became a strong compulsion to smoke, and then I would find myself binge eating on food, isolating myself, where in the beginning it was playful, it was with friends, we were having fun. It turned into something dark for me. where I would binge eat and isolate myself. So I think anything that can help us get more connected to people, more connected to ourselves, that doesn't hurt anybody else, doesn't harm our body, I think is an extraordinary thing, whatever that thing is. However, for me, it began to become something where I would isolate myself and hide away from people and hide away from my feelings, hide away from life. For example, when things got hard at work, I'd want to smoke. And sometimes I even smoked right before work, a couple times, just, because I didn't want to face off with going to work, etc. So next thing is I went through long periods of sobriety, and I lived in Bali, Indonesia, which weed is very illegal there. And like they threaten like 20 years in jail kind of thing. And anyone who goes to Bali knows you don't want to fuck with the government because they don't really follow rules. They follow the money, baby. So yeah, you're kind of fucked if you do something like that. So I stayed away from it and didn't even notice not having cannabis in my life. Was just kind of okay without it, enjoyed it, came back to Canada. It was legalized and enjoyed it a lot and used it and then overused it a bit and then brought myself down and kind of have found now my boundaries of, okay, this is enough. And now I have the relationship where I might have a craving to smoke weed, but I can know that it's not the right time for me right now. I'm sure I'll enjoy it again in the future, but right now it's not the time. I need to, set that boundary with myself, which is easier said than done. But I've done a lot of work to reconnect with my gut, my heart, my authentic self, building up a reputation in my brain. My brain knows that when I say something, I do it most of the time. Sometimes I don't do it. Sometimes I'm lazy, but most of the time when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And my brain knows that. So if I say, no, I'm not going to smoke today or right now, I have a lot more personal power when it comes to that. And it's something anybody can train, by the way. So where I'm at today, now I've learned a ton studying about addiction, trauma. I've learned from therapists live on my podcast. I've studied from some of the best therapists in the world. I've read their books. I've listened to their podcasts, all sorts of therapy methods from somatic experiencing to polyvagal theory to compassionate inquiry. And I could go on and on, internal family systems. And there's tons of amazing benefits from studying these therapy methods, and it helps make addiction make more sense because then you start to realize that the reason I do this thing externally to make me feel good is because I don't feel good inside. And there's a reason I don't feel good inside, and it's from my past, and we can heal that. Okay. So I've also learned conscious ways to use cannabis that really help me and serve me. In fact, last night I puffed a little bit and it was super fun. I went and played basketball. I talked to this cool guy. I did a bunch of work that day. Like for me, whenever I do something like a pleasure like cannabis, I always make sure I crush productivity first. That's kind of my rule. Like if I work a hard day, hell yeah, I can use that to celebrate or to enjoy. It's totally cool with me. And so I did that last night, enjoyed it. And now basically because of my relationship with cannabis and with myself and my training in trauma and addiction, I help men quit all sorts of addictions, but weed is probably the most common one that I see in the men that at least I work with. And I want to teach them better ways to use weed if they don't want to quit, learning to limit it and fill that emotional need, whether it's relaxation or creativity or sociability, whatever that weed does for you, learning better, healthier, more empowering ways to fill that need so you don't need it all the time and can kind of step back, connect with yourself, because from that place, you got a whole bunch more personal power to rip your life open. So an exercise for those of you watching, if you're driving in the car or something of that nature, just think in your head and pause the video. If you're having a pen and paper, pause the video and write this down. How did your relationship with cannabis start? How do you feel towards cannabis? If it could talk, what would it say? These questions are going to help you understand where was the beginning process for you? How did this journey with cannabis come to be? How do you feel towards it? What's your relationship with it? And what would it say to you? And what would you want to say to it, perhaps? This is an exercise to start to understand what cannabis does for you. Cool. So pause the video and do that if you haven't already. If you came back, welcome back. So here's the cannabis pros. So these are the pros that I see for some people, not all people. Because remember, we all have different biochemistries, different CB1, CB2 receptors in the brain. So we're all going to get affected differently. So number one, it taps body bliss, which helps us remember it later when we're sober. This is true for other psychoactives as well, like mushrooms, for example. It can help us tap into some beautiful, beautiful felt somatic senses in our body, beautiful, beautiful feelings, and our body remembers it and can help us tap into it later when we're sober. So sometimes they can be a gateway into tapping into some real, real bliss. So that's one benefit. Number two, the doors of perception open. It changes our perception. We can see things we didn't see before. We can become more aware of ourselves. This is all really cool and valuable. right? So it can be a door to perception. I think Aldous Huxley wrote a book about this. I haven't read it, but it seems to be a pretty popular book that people in the flow state community talk about, etc. So doors of perception open. Third thing is it helps us heal physically and emotionally in the right space and the right dose. So I'll start with the emotions. I've found, at least for me, but I've also seen this with others, I mean, weed helps dampen down that prefrontal cortex, like I shared at the start of the video, and it can help open up that doorway between the conscious and subconscious mind. It can lower our brain waves down. We can relax enough, feel safe enough to start having some emotion come up and have it be healed. Because oftentimes cannabis can put us in a pretty positive emotional state. And those are pretty resourceful states that we can, you know what, I'm going to view this differently. I'm going to let go of this pain. I'm going to let go of this belief. I'm going to make something new. It can be a tool for that. It can help us heal physically. This is not something that I do personally or have any experience in, but after reading some material, it can help us heal physically, it would seem as well. And again, in the right dose, the right context, but it certainly is not for everybody. Okay. And for some, it helps their creativity, which, by the way, you can be very, very creative without weed. In fact, I'm going to challenge most of you watching right now, you're probably very creative already, but because you've been using weed for a long time, weed can actually numb creativity because it can numb our emotions, our connection to our heart, if we use it chronically. And it might actually have been one of the reasons you smoked in the first place. To be creative means you're living from the heart. And it's not from the head. Creativity isn't a head thing, it's a heart thing, right? And so all of that creative energy can be so overwhelming. There's so much aliveness in the body. We want to just escape it and numb it. But we learn to do that from when we're very young. And then cannabis comes along when you're a teenager or a young adult. And all of a sudden it helps you tap back into that aliveness, that creativity, that inspiration, that variety. I'm not bored anymore. Meanwhile, you have access to it already, but because you've experienced some trauma in your life, you push down those feelings that helped you access it before cannabis. And the last thing, this is more just for me. I love to tell jokes in cannabis. I'm laughing, I'm having fun. And I think that can be very, very powerful. And then the last thing, especially for a lot of the men out here, it can help you tap back into your feminine, into your being qualities, where you're just chill, you're relaxed. You're not overdoing, you're not overachieving, you're not overthinking anymore. You can kind of just relax. And we need that yin yang balance. Everyone has their own balance, but I promise you, from someone who went very masculine, very doing, always productive, always achieving, always doing something, it burns you out. And we need time to let our body come back to its, natural form of balance. Okay. And for all of these, it's if used in the right dose for the right reason or intention and the right strain of cannabis and quality of cannabis. Not all cannabis is grown equally. Even, from studying from real cannabis experts, they talk about how even the water content of the cannabis, it's the most permeable to emotional or subtler vibrations, something like that. It's along that same thread where the energy of the grower themselves actually starts to permeate the cannabis. And so we're smoking in the energy of that person. It might sound super ridiculous to some of you. Other people that have had spiritual experiences and understand that this whole universe is just a big vibration, that my body appears to be solid, but really it's just vibrating so fast. It appears solid, just like you might see a light or a lamp. It appears like it's just one light, but it's actually vibrating extremely fast. That's why it appears solid. And so anyway, some of you get that, some of you don't, but all that to say the quality matters. It's not all created equal. Cool. Now here's some of the cons. Now I say for most people, where on the pros it was for some people. The cons, this is for most people. Okay. And you have to decide for yourself. You're going to take this information however you'd like. I'm not shaming anybody here or saying you should stop. I'm just simply informing you with the best version of the truth I have. Okay. First thing I found when I was studying cannabis is it can create low motivation. It's very common. So people that are in addictive patterns, they adjust their goals to fit that addictive pattern, where a person not addicted adjusts their behavior to fit their goals. That's a big distinction. And this apparently comes from less gray matter in the brain, less ability to make that decision. So if you really want to achieve a goal, you got to be willing to change your lifestyle. You have to be willing to adjust your behavior to make that goal happen. But if you're using cannabis a lot, it can be way more difficult. Cannabis seems to be more important than maybe letting it go for a few months to actually focus on a goal, as an example. Second thing I noticed, imbalanced biochemistry. So specifically when it comes to upregulating and downregulating our nervous system. So if we're constantly upregulating our brain and nervous system with weed, it doesn't give proper downregulation time to keep us in balance, which leads to mood challenges, empathy, social, relational challenges. And I've experienced that myself, where I felt like a bit disconnected or a bit like not fully present or there. Like I couldn't have full empathy, and my mood was going up and down. And that comes from, and this is from Paul Chek, who was talking about this on his podcast with someone. What happens is when you have that much cannabis coming into your system, the THC clogs the cells where normally new information is supposed to flow to help your brain regulate your mood and emotions. But because it's clogged up, that information can't permeate the cell. And so you can't get that information that helps you down regulate, helps you remain balanced, and helps you not have these mood challenges, basically. Right. So that's the second thing I noticed. The third thing, memory and concentration. Now, most people that use chronically, pretty much everyone that uses chronically can speak to this from their own experience, but reading becomes harder, remembering important appointments sometimes, or just remembering information. What did I learn yesterday? Again, from less gray matter in the brain, apparently. So memory and concentration, what does it lead to when you have it? You can learn more, you can earn more because of it. You're more present, you're more like, energy's flowing because you can remember stuff. To me, it's such an important part of life is to be able to learn and learn fast. If you want to be successful, especially and achieve goals, to learn and learn fast is extraordinarily important. But it's tough to do when your memory sucks or your concentration sucks. If you can't hold your focus on a book to take in the information, and if you can't remember it after you learn it, then it's not going to do you much good. Fourth thing, which is very valuable, is delaying gratification becomes super hard because it affects the part of the brain that connects actions and consequences. So have you ever noticed when you smoke weed, you just go straight for the food and you just can't help yourself, or you go straight to your favorite show and you don't even think twice? So what cannabis does is it affects the part of your brain that can actually help you delay gratification. And delaying gratification is associated with making more money and being happier, by the way. Just so you know, that's everyone can agree on that. And so the more you smoke cannabis, the more that this part of your brain gets downregulated, the less you're able to connect actions and consequences, which means you make worse decisions, which nobody wants ultimately. And then the last thing is that it has mental health problems at times. It can cause intense anxiety for anyone who's predisposed to it. And those who have extreme paranoia, they know what that's like. And there's other users, and if you're watching this, you probably haven't had the intense anxiety most of the time. You've probably had some pretty nice experiences. But if you use it chronically, it's very, very common to develop an anxiety or depression on some level. For chronic users, we're talking, daily use for years. So this is very, very possible. Okay. Here's how I've learned to view addiction. This may help some of you. Number one, life is complex and transcends labels, friends. So you're not just addicted or not addicted. There's emotional reasons for doing it. There's cultural reasons for doing it. There are certain moments and times, different stages of life, different contexts. So it's not that black and white. And it's worth, sitting with and having your own experience, not just labeling yourself. The Gabor Mate definition. Gabor Mate is an amazing trauma therapist, an addiction specialist for years. He worked in the east side of downtown Vancouver in their addictions department, I believe, or palliative care. I can't remember which one or both, but his definition of addiction is this: any behavior that I do that gives me pleasure in the short term, but I know it's not good for me in the long term, yet I'm unwilling to give it up despite the negative consequences. That's an addiction in his definition. So by that definition, everybody's addicted to something. We all have our little thing that's not the best for us, but hey, it's our little pleasure. We like it. So that's one way that I view addiction, which helps me as a coach feel really connected to my clients. I don't feel above any of my clients. I see myself in my clients. They'll share with me the worst of the worst things they've done. And I'm like, I get it. I got a little piece of worthlessness in me. I got a little piece of an asshole in me. I got a little piece of whatever in me. We're all connected. We all have a collective mind. Cool. This is probably the biggest perspective that has helped me, which is that all addictions fill emotional needs, my friends. Weed helps you feel good or relaxed, or it helps you feel creative and inspired, or it helps you feel connected, or it just helps you freaking escape and be in a whole new world, something like that. There's some emotional need it's filling. And when you understand exactly what that need is, which doesn't take very much time, you can then find a healthy way to fill that need, which is why what I will talk about coming up is replacements, things you can replace weed with. And then the last thing, it is a relationship. And if any relationship is valued, we're naturally going to want to protect it, and we'll protect it by justifying our behavior or rationalizing it. Oh, I only smoke, in the evenings, or it's not bad that I smoke joints because at least it's not a dab rig or whatever. We'll say all these things to rationalize our use, and we'll deny and block out the truths of how it actually is destructive. Like if you really look at how much it costs you financially, once you understand the emotional costs of it, the relational costs of it, the productivity costs of it, it may become really clear to limit or quit. Cool. So Michael Stratton, he wrote a great book called A Little Green Book, I think it's called. It's a cannabis recovery book. Very good book for anyone who wants to look into this. Search up this dude's name. You'll find some awesome stuff. He talks about this in 5 steps to, first of all, having the change to become an addict and then coming out of becoming an addict. So the first thing is pre-contemplation of use. So it's kind of the stage pre-contemplation is when you kind of just hear about weed, but you don't really think about it. Kind of comes in and out, it comes one ear out the other. You're not fully thinking about it, but it's in your awareness. Second stage is contemplation. You're actually actively thinking, what if I did use cannabis? What effects would it have? Would it be enjoyable? Would I like to use it? You're actually thinking about it. And if that conversation goes well inside your head, then you start to prepare for it. Okay, I'm going to go buy it from the store. I'm going to get this much. I'm going to smoke it here. Okay, and then you get it and you take the action, which is step number 4. You smoke it, you get high. And then the 5th step is maintenance. So you maintain the habit. You keep getting high. You keep going back to preparation, action, maintenance. Or excuse me, I guess it would just be preparation, action, preparation, action. Potentially even contemplation, preparation, action. Okay, so these are the 5 steps, but it also works with recovery. So some of you right now, you might be in that contemplation stage. You probably are if you're watching this video. Some of you are in the preparation stage where this video is just preparing. You've already made the decision. I'm going to limit or I'm going to quit. You've already made the decision, and this video is part of your preparation. And some of you are watching this already in the action stage or the maintenance stage where you've taken action. I'm quitting or I'm fully limiting, and you set some strict boundaries with yourself that feel, good to you. And yeah, if you're in the maintenance phase, then you've been doing this for a while. You've quit for, a few months or years, and you're maintaining, or you've quit for a few weeks at the minimum. So these are the 5 steps, and you'll notice, watch, next time you have the desire for weed, you can know I'm in the contemplation stage, or maybe pre-contemplation stage. Then notice when your mind starts to help you prepare for it. Okay, I'm going to drive to that store and buy the weed today. And then you'll, before you know it, you'll have a joint in your hand, you'll be smoking, right? Or whatever, however you take in cannabis. Okay, so those are the 5 steps. Hope that provides some clarity. Few ways to overcome. First, if you want to overcome this addiction, if you're not doing physical activity, you're not giving yourself much of a shot, because this helps you feel really, really good. And if you feel really, really good, there's less need to use weed. Second thing, trauma healing. If you start to understand some of the pain of, why you feel certain emotions, why you may need to escape, why things get overwhelming. One way to look at trauma is anything when you're young that's too fast, too much, too soon. When you're very young, that's a lot of things, because we're very sensitive beings when we're young. So learning how to heal yourself, learning how to connect with your heart, it'll very, very, very much help you in this addiction process. Probably the most important. If I was going to say one thing, this would be it. Cool. The next thing is new social connections that are on the same page as you, a new tribe that you vibe with, baby. People that understand you, people that understand addiction, people that aren't closed off, people that are open, people that you feel safe around, because secrets, shame, abuse, addiction, and lies, they grow in the dark. And if you want to bring light to them, you got to share them. And that sharing equals healing when it's held in the safe space. So getting new social connections. 4th thing is some new hobbies and replacements. So I'm going to share with some more replacements in a second, but some new fun hobbies, some new fun things you can do, picking up a new sport or learning a new skill, or maybe going on a week, driving out to a farm once a week or something like that to go buy your vegetables. I don't know, but something new that's exciting to you. And then replacements, I'll get to them in a second, but there's tons of stuff you can replace it with. Reading, exercise, new relationships, even watching documentaries, like even watching TV can be a replacement if it's a quality information that you're taking in. Okay? The 5th thing is getting engaged in something that's larger than just you. Your mission for your work, your family, connection to God or spirit, and ideally a better job that you love. That will very, very, very much help. So now you're nourishing yourself from the in time. You're serving something beyond me. Addictions are to serve the self, but not to serve others. So when you start to get engaged in something larger than you, this starts to matter more than your need to have this addiction. Okay. And if you get replacements, then all of a sudden you can replace it. You don't feel like you're really missing anything. You're actually, oftentimes people will report feeling 10 times better when they quit and they actually have healthy replacements. They feel more like themselves. They're more connected. They're more confident. They have more stability in their moods. They're more productive. They make more money, all the things. Okay. A few skills I think you guys will need. This is my personal opinion of someone who's gone through this journey of smoking lots, then lowering my dosage, and finally having a healthy relationship with it. First thing is emotional regulation skills. This is like when I feel overwhelmed or stressed, what do I do? People, when they smoke a cigarette, oh my God, I feel unsafe or uncertain. So learning how to do that without the cigarette, right? Learning to breathe, learning to relax, learning to slow down, learning to pause, learning to be there with your thoughts, not push them away, but just watch them pass by, learning to be there with your inner child and support him, etc. Second thing, learning how to ego or ghost dance, as they might say. So that part of you that's just like that little devil in there that just wants like, give me more weed, more weed, more weed. If you push it away, it'll come back strong, right? If you run away from it, it'll chase you. But if you can dance with it, now it doesn't have control over you. You're influencing it. Learning how to ghost dance. Third thing is social skills, because if you want to make a new tribe, you gotta bring some social vibes to them. You gotta have better social skills to make those friendships, right? So social skills will be needed. Fourth thing is concentration, memory, or learning skills. So learning how to learn would be a very valuable first thing to learn when you're overcoming this journey. And learning how to practice your concentration, for example, practicing a meditation for 5 to 10 minutes, practicing focusing on a book and just following your finger, that it will help you rebuild the skill of concentration, memory, and learning. Active recall will help with memory. And the last thing is organization and productivity skills. Just learning to organize your life again, learning to be focused, learning to bring a bit more structure into your life. This is very, very helpful because it'll help you make better decisions. It'll help you schedule things in that you need to do. So hope that makes sense. An exercise for you, if you'd like, is you can click the link below or send me a DM and I will send you my relationship with cannabis questionnaire. It's an extraordinary, very provocative questions that will help you understand yourself better, even more than you have in this video. And when you send it to me, I will send you back a personalized, specific set of tools that I think will serve you based on my knowledge and experience for free. I'm not asking for anything in return. Your questionnaire will be more than enough for me, and I'd love to serve this population because cannabis can be a huge tool, but it can also hold us back a lot. And if anybody out here wants to start really, truly living the way that they're meant to live, the way that they're born to live, and really get to that place where you feel like you're operating at your full potential, and cannabis you see as a block to that, even if it doesn't mean quitting but limiting, then this questionnaire would be super valuable for you because I can give you specific daily things that you can do that will help. Specific things like, for example, a certain amount of time for a specific activity and steps for how to do that activity. Okay, so you can have actual guidance. So hope this helps. And to all of you out there, keep enjoying cannabis if you're using it. And if you want to start developing a healthy relationship with yourself. And before you know it, you'll be having all the fun in the world with or without cannabis.